So next we're going to go through a few modifications that we can use on the bench press and when we might apply those. So there's lots of different variations, just like any other lift, that we can use in certain times to get certain benefits that we want. The first one we're going to do is an extended pause. So obviously working with a lot of power lifters, in general for strength, I'd advise most of you pause most of your reps most of the time. If you're under 5 reps, I would suggest that you pause your bench press. The pause just means that the bar is stationary and then we press. The reason we do that is just for safety. You're dumping that bar in and out. You're definitely going to be beating up your shoulders over time. So a pause just gives you a quantifiable metric that, did I do the same rep as last time? Did I just bounce it harder off my chest? Have I actually gotten stronger? Am I actually keeping everything in the position that I want it to? Or am I just throwing weight around? If you're over 5 reps, touch and go, I don't mind too much. Definitely want to be paused for under 5. What we're going to look at here though is an extended pause. Why we might do that is a couple of different reasons. One of the most common is when people start to get heavier up in loads, particularly if they're heading towards testing or competition, we start to rush that pause a little bit. It starts to become a little bit more of a touch and go. So we want to be comfortable in that position and get used to staying there. If you are competing, one of the sport elements of powerlifting is pause calls can vary. Different judges will deem different things as still, and some will be faster, some will be slower. So it's always advantageous to be slightly longer in your pauses. Another reason you might use it is it's load limiting. If you add an extra long pause, it means that the load of the lift is going to come down while you're still training the skill that you want to from the lift. That means it's going to beat you up, create less fatigue, and you can apply that volume somewhere else. So what a paused bench would look like, all of Maddie's examples so far have been paused. We're just going to do it a little bit longer. So we would come down and we just hold on our chest for 3, 2, 1, press. And again, we're down, 3, 2, 1, press. In that position, we can hold tension and still be driving our feet in and driving that hip extension, keeping our lats turned on, bending the bar, holding the brace breath. So it's teaching us to stay really, really rigid. And that when we do press it, we need to create that extra force through the floor, pushing away from the bench. And if we don't have that, we get found out really, really quickly. So it's a good one for those people that get a little bit lazy in that transition as well. Next, we're going to look at is a slightly different concept. It's still a variation of a pause. We call it a spotto press. And all it is just stopping 2 inches off the chest for your pause rather than all the way down on the chest. Reason being, it forces you to stay in a really strong position, engage those lats, and stay really strong and own that bar rather than just letting it sit on the chest and getting a little bit of a cheat out of it. So some people will be able to press more when they spotto than normal. Some people will be less. Just depends on where your strengths and weaknesses are in your bench press. So it's not necessarily a load limiting exercise, but it does reduce the range of motion, does reduce the challenge on the shoulder. So if we do have some issues, it might be a good option to just have in as a sometimes when we can't actually do the full comp bench for whatever reason. So Mads, executing the bench press exactly the same as normal. We're just stopping 2 inches short and then driving up. So a 2-second pause usually. So we come down and hold and press. So we don't have that tactile feedback, that little bit of a cheat of having it on our chest, and then we're pressing up. Last variation, we're going to do a feet up. Now there's 2 general types of feet up. We can do what some people will call a Larsen press, which is our feet straight out in front of us. What that does, if you have a look at Mads's upper body now, it's really hard to create an arch. We're going to get a little bit out of the thoracic. This is a good one for people that use their lumbar spine too much in their extension, so it forces them to come up through that thoracic, and also just forces people to use their lats when they're pressing because it forces you to keep into this position. I don't use this one too much, just the lack of stability is too far down the road for me, but it is really effective in some cases. What I tend to use more is a feet up press, where we can still get a little bit of an arch, but we've lost all that hip extension, so we can't get as much as we typically would. So Maz is going to try and get as much as she can. That's it. And then we bring the bar up. So what this has done is a few things. We've lost that stability from the floor, which is going to reduce load. We've lost that hip extension, which is going to reduce load through the range of motion and the stability. So we're pulling this load back and back. Now what Maddie needs to do is create as much internal stability as possible through the bar and through her back to stabilize this through the full range. So we'll go through a full press, maybe do a couple of reps. So still looks the same, but you can see Maddie's got to fight to keep those hips nice and steady. She's still trying to drive her feet in. She's looking for that tension, but obviously able to use much, much less weight. So a really good off-season exercise to keep people pressing while still chasing volume somewhere else without the fatigue that would be created. So that's a few variations that I like to use, different times, different stages of athlete. When you're learning, maybe a spotto press is really good just to feel it out. We could also use tempos, so a slow negative on the way down. The pause press works really well when you're learning as well. For a more advanced lifter that we just want to get some load out, maybe take care of some joints, the feet up bench press is a really good option. One last one that I haven't put in the content is a floor press, and that's just another way to reduce range of motion. And we do exactly the same thing, we're just laying on the floor. And so when we come down, our elbows touch, so we get that external tactile force. Similar range to a spotto press, we're touching and then driving up, and it's essentially the feet up as well. We can't get that hip extension. So really good off-season exercise just to maintain skill and allow you to drive volume somewhere else. So lots of different variations of the bench that you can use depending on where you're at in terms of if you're building strength, hypertrophy training, or if you're in that expression of strength stage and preparing for a competition.